Do you think that, so obviously in today's society, there's a lot of talk about how sort of attention spans are shrinking and people are far more invested in watching television shows and films than they are necessarily sitting down to read an entire novel. Do you think that that is a hindrance on, like, say you're a budding writer, for instance, you're still in school, anything like that, and you're inspired to be an author. Do you think that that's a hindrance to that person, that potentially it's harder for them to make it as an author?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I met a friend yesterday he's a TV director, and we were talking about his son's. We were talking about films actually, but which is kind of, but it's similar terms in terms of attention span, because we were talking about The Godfather, and we were talking
Great
about
movie.
it's like great movie, but slow. Well,
Yeah.
but I love slow, and I was brought up on slow films. But when I was as a teacher and just kind of with my own kids, I know that anything that kind of lacks pace, it's like, you know. You guys have a generation where, you know, everything is like that. Everything is like, you know, memes and short videos and TikTok and everything's like fast. So the idea of sitting down and watching a 3-hour film where scenes can really take their time, I think it's difficult. And I think, you know, when I was your age, we didn't have the internet, so we didn't have that. It was much easier for us to sit down and read a book over an afternoon, or sit down in a cinema and watch a film that's 2.5, 3 hours long and kind of just go, right, this is normal. Whereas now, yeah, I think attention spans are different unless there's a car chase and, you know, kind of Spider-Man's flying around. It's a bit like, I don't know. I think it's harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd say our generation is on the cusp of that, because there are some people who I'd say are our age and can't, exactly like you said, they can't sit through a long movie, has to be quick, snap, snap, snap. But then there's some people who still do appreciate it, so it's still...
Yeah.
We're sort of a middle ground.
Yeah.
I'd say if you're 5-10 years younger than us, then you're really struggling with
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's definitely an age thing. I think, you know, my daughter's 19 now, and she'll sit down and watch a really nice kind of art house movie that takes its time. But then, you know, she's interested in cinema. But I think as a sort of general, sort of more of a sort of generalisation, I think the attention spans are getting shorter.
And what is surprising is podcasts. I'm taking this onto podcasts now. Is podcasts are massive right now.
Yeah.
And they are long form content.
Yeah, true.
They are a group of people sitting, not necessarily talking about things like this.
No.
But it's still massive right now, which is an interesting thing to talk about. When you have got some people will sit and scroll TikTok and then sit and watch a podcast. It's very...
But I think that's the appeal to it. I think podcasts can be such a background thing that if you're watching a film, if that's a background activity and you're doing something else like scrolling TikTok, you're not going to have a clue what's going on in the film. But with a podcast, you only have to really listen.
Yeah.
So you can have a podcast on while you're doing chores or anything like that.
Yeah,
so I think
how
that's the
listen
appeal to it.
Yeah, it's sort of background or going for a walk or whatever it is. You kind of have them sort of in the earphones on and you're doing something else. Actually, an interesting point though. I think it's sort of... But also, you know, I know that from my own children, their viewing habits are so different now. You know, they'll be watching stuff on YouTube. They won't watch a lot of terrestrial stuff. They certainly won't watch anything live. I mean, they won't sit down and watch something at 9 o'clock on terrestrial because maybe, you know, Love Island. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like when I was your age, that's what we had. We had terrestrial TV.
Yeah.
You could record it, but yeah, people would sit down and just watch what was on TV that night. Whereas now, the choice is incredible. So... It's changed massively in you know, just a few decades.
Yeah,
It is almost too much.
Well, that's the thing as well. I think with the rise of smart TVs, you've got everything on demand all in once.
You
You've got streaming platforms like Netflix, which if you don't want to watch something, you just turn it off and put something else on.
Yeah.
There's no I'd say the only live TV I watch now is just sport.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
it.
Yeah,
and nothing else. There's no, like you say, there's no waiting for my show comes on at
9
this
o'clock.
time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then so I'll
We'll
wait
sit down and watch it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember there was a TV show that decided to go to do weekly.
Yes.
And the internet went, sorry, what? Why are you doing weekly? Why is it not all at once? And
I was
I can't remember the show.
I can't remember the show, but I know there are shows on streaming platforms that do that. For instance, one of my favourite shows is The Boys, which is on Amazon.
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys are both probably aware of it then, but that releases weekly, and but it's still, obviously they could just release it all in one go and it'd be so easy to binge. But I think the appeal of releasing something weekly is that there's so much speculation that goes on around it, especially with a show like that.
Yeah.
And I think particularly with like if there was a crime or murder mystery show that did weekly formatted episodes that was like really popularized, I think that would benefit so much from the speculation, intrigue that would go on, particularly online.
Yeah,
places like
social media.
Twitter. Social media is massive for fans getting together and just speculating about what's going to happen next. I think that's something that platforms like Netflix and Prime really benefit from.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I think releasing, I mean, as you said, with a whodunit or a crime thing, and there have been trying to think of any of. I think The Undoing with Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman had that, where they were only Sky Atlantic released it once, as you said, a weekly, and in between newspapers online, everyone was going, well, did Hugh Grant do it? Did he really do it? And it's like, and it builds up, and then you've got a whole week also of an audience going, we need to know. And it's like, so when you sit down, it's a real event, rather than going, well, we can just watch this in 6 hours and have it done like that. I think that makes a big difference.
Makes a massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even more than that, I think it benefits the producers and the makers of these TV shows, especially because if you've got people talking about it, say you're in the office or you're with your friends and you're talking about this TV show, but you're talking about one episode in particular, that brings other viewers into it because they're going to want to be included in the conversation. Whereas if you talk about it and it's just you've been able to binge the whole thing. If you get to the end and it's an unsatisfactory ending, I'll use Game of Thrones as an example. If you're able to binge that entire season 8 in one go, you'd have got to the end and you'd have just been talking about how bad it was. But if you were able to watch episode by episode and you know that before the start of episode 3 there's a big battle coming, everyone's talking about it, that makes people want to go and watch it.
Yeah. The word of mouth is a big thing, and you don't, as you said, you don't get that if it's on people who just binge watched a series. They might go, "Oh, that's quite good," but you haven't got that build up where you're going, "Oh my god, are you watching so and so?
Yeah,
next week is going to be amazing. Why didn't you catch up with it?" And yeah, it's like the kind of water cooler TV stuff where people kind of meet at the water cooler and they start going, "Oh my god, what did you watch last night?" You don't get that with box sets.
No,
so it's not the same.